Okay, so we got into Zayin, into section Zayin here on page Tzadik Ches, where the Rebbe explained a quote from the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe, after he was released from jail, said a statement that only our body was sent into exile, but our soul was never sent into exile. That the guf, the body, the physical body, is in exile, is subjugated by the other nations, and can suffer oppression. But our soul cannot be subjugated by anybody, and never went into exile. So the Rebbe asks, how can we reconcile that statement with the fact? The fact is that when we're in exile, our soul is affected, because we are not able to learn Torah and do mitzvahs on the same level as when there is revelation, when there's a Beis HaMikdash. The afflictions and the oppressions of exile have reduced our ability to understand. We don't understand Torah the way they did when they had the temple, when there were prophets. We don't have that level of connection. So how can the Friedrich Rebbe say that our souls are not in exile? Our souls never went into exile. It's not true. So the Rebbe explained that no, because the exile is divinely decreed, because Hashem sent us into exile with an intention, so therefore even the exile itself can't be said to affect our soul. Meaning, whatever our spiritual connection is with Hashem now in exile is exactly how it's supposed to be. That's exactly where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing. For now. And because it's divinely decreed. Because the exile itself is also divinely decreed. And therefore, you can't say our soul is missing anything. Physically, our body, externally, we're missing something. We're disconnected. We don't have revelation. But our soul is exactly where it's supposed to be, doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, in the exact way that it's supposed to be. So there's nothing missing from the soul, only from the body.
So if someone says, I'm doing nothing, because that's exactly, how do you, it's easy to say, I do nothing, because that's exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, how does it stop you from pushing yourself forward if you can easily say
what it's saying is that if you're doing mitzvahs in your circumstance, you can't say, well, if it would have been the Beis HaMikdash, I would have been much better. No. You are where you're supposed to be. In your circumstance, you have to be doing what you're doing, of course, what you're supposed to be doing. But if you are, then that's exactly where you're supposed to be. You're not missing anything. Your soul's not missing anything. Which is a very new
So it's saying the soul's not disconnected in any way.
It's saying that the soul has every opportunity to connect in the right way. It's not saying that everyone's doing the right thing. It's saying that you have every opportunity to be exactly what you're supposed to be, and your soul's not missing anything. Your soul's not lacking any opportunity. So the Rebbe now is going to explain this a bit better, and in fact he's going to explain it on various different levels. On the top line of Tzadik Tes, v'inyan zeh hu lo yichuka ki im efshel asbira gam b'seichel denefesh elikis. This idea, the idea that we are exactly where we're supposed to be, and the soul is lacking nothing, and it's doing exactly what it can do, and it's got every opportunity. This idea is not a chukah. It's not a statute. It's not a irrational statement. Meaning, it's not something you just have to believe without any logic. Rather, it's possible to explain this with the logic of the divine soul. Al pi hamavur b'Tanya, because it fits in with what's explained in the book of Tanya. In Tanya it says, "Shayichud hanas al yidei limud haTorah v'kiyum mitzvos hu nitzchi la'olam va'ed." That the connection that we have with Hashem through learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs is eternal and is forever. Meaning, v'hainu shayichud nitzchi zeh shalamaylu hukam lamata. What this means is that the connection that we have above is also below. Meaning what? In Tanya it says that when you do a mitzvah, the connection you have with Hashem is an infinite one. An infinite connection with Hashem. There's no limit to it whatsoever. And therefore it never goes away. It is forever. One mitzvah you did once in your life is yours forever and remains, that connection, the relationship, is one that will remain forever, that never goes away. And even if you later disconnect or whatever, but the connection you forged is eternal, is always there. So the Rebbe adds to that another angle and says that what that means, if it's eternal, if it's nitzki lo'olam v'od, if it's an eternal bond, that means that down here in this world it is also that way. Meaning the connection that connection, the infinite bond that you have with Hashem when you do a mitzvah, where did that happen? Down here in this world, in this physical world. Which means when we do a mitzvah, even now, even in exile, even without any revelation, we feel nothing. We don't feel any godliness. But you did a mitzvah. That moment of mitzvah is a connection with Hashem that is an infinite, unlimited connection. So what are we missing? What's missing? From a soul perspective. The body doesn't feel the revelation. Which when we have Mashiach or when there's a temple, you see revelation of God. Okay, that's from a bodily perspective. But from the soul perspective, when you do a mitzvah now, that mitzvah is an infinite, unlimited connection with Hashem. So what's missing?
In all its light and glory.
Yeah. Just not revealed to us, to the body. The soul is connecting to the essence of Hashem when you do a mitzvah. So this, using the logic of the Nefesh Elokis, what that means, the Rebbe is going to go through and show this idea in the logic of the Nefesh Elokis, of the divine soul, and then explain it in the logic of the animal soul as well. What does that mean? There's two levels of intellect we have. There's the intellect of the divine soul and the intellect of the animal soul. The intellect of the divine soul means our spiritual intellect, the intellect that we have that has a sense of the godly. So to the divine soul, when you're talking logic, what's the logic of the divine soul? Well, it says in Tanya. It says in Tanya that every mitzvah connects you with Hashem in an infinite, unlimited way. So our divine soul has now a proof from the book of Tanya that when you do a mitzvah, even today, you're connected with Hashem in an unlimited way. That's good for the divine soul. Our animal soul doesn't go for a proof from Tanya. An animal soul and its logic is more human logic. It has to be much more. It has to be argued better. You can't just quote Tanya. You have to give me some backing, some proof. Our animal soul does appreciate a logical argument. It does appreciate that because there is logic, there is seichel and intellect in our animal soul. But the intellect of the animal soul is human intellect, whereas the intellect of the divine soul is divine intellect. So to the divine soul we can say, okay, divine soul, you're worried about being in Golus, that maybe you're in exile, you're affected by exile. Look what it says in Tanya, that when you do a mitzvah, you're connected to Hashem infinitely. An infinite, unlimited connection. So you're missing nothing. From the soul perspective, the divine soul can appreciate that we're missing nothing.
So is the goal, just on that point, is the goal to transform the animal soul's intellect to a godly one, or just to maintain it in its own way?
Well, we're going to see. The next line is going to say exactly what the goal is. So that's from the divine soul's perspective. But the inyan zeh, on the fourth line, the inyan zeh efshar lahas begam b'seichel nefesh bahamis. But this idea, the idea that our soul is unaffected by exile and we're exactly where we're supposed to be, is even possible to explain to the intellect of the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul. We can even logically back this up. Brackets. Shatachlis limud aterahu shalidei seichel nefesh elokis yegam seichel nefesh bahamis miyuchad biyichud nifla. Because the whole point of learning Torah, after all, is that through the intellect of the divine soul, the intellect of the animal soul will also be connected to Hashem. Meaning, it's not good enough that our divine soul gets it. We want our animal soul to get it as well. Which means, the reason why we learn Torah, why we learn it in a way where we question and we ask and we analyze and we make sense of things and we find contradictions that have to be answered. Why do we learn Torah in such a way? It would seem that the way to learn Torah should be, what are we learning? We're learning Torah. Torah is the divine wisdom. So how should you learn Torah? Just read what it says and accept it. What are you questioning here? What are you asking? You need to understand it. Just read it and accept what it says. It's divine wisdom. No, that's not the way we learn Torah. The way we learn Torah is you've got to understand it and it's got to make sense and you have to reconcile different things. It has to fit. Why? Because the whole point is that our animal soul should appreciate Torah, should appreciate the divine, that our animal self should connect with Hashem. And so things have to be explained logically. It has to fit together.
Because the divine soul just gets it, right?
Right. Yeah, the divine soul doesn't need any backing or proof or arguments. It just hears the truth and gets it, accepts it. Whereas the animal soul needs to be convinced. And so that's why we spend time learning Torah. We're convincing our animal soul, this makes sense, it fits. So our divine soul is already satisfied. We've already told the divine soul, when you do a mitzvah, you're connected to Hashem infinitely. And that applies to Golus, to exile, just like it does in the Beis Hamikdash times. When you do a mitzvah, now you're connected infinitely to Hashem. The divine soul says, fine, I got it. Now we're going to say, okay, but the animal soul is not satisfied with that. What do you mean? What do you mean that in exile, if I've been banished from the Holy Land, sent out into exile, there's no Beis Hamikdash, there's no revelation, how can you say that my soul is as connected, as if nothing's happened for the soul? It's only the body that's affected. How can you say that? So now we have to prove it to the animal soul. So this is how we do, after the brackets there. Because we know that Hashem's intent in every descent is for an ascent that comes afterwards. Yeah? That the divine wisdom, the divine intention in any step down must be for the sake of stepping up. Hashem doesn't push downwards. Hashem only wants us to go up. So any descent is for the sake of ascent. So it's obvious. So obviously Hashem, who is the one who sent us into exile, he is the boss, not just on the ascent that comes afterwards, but on the descent that happens beforehand as well. So therefore, obviously, the step down in order to step up must be complete. Meaning, every detail of the step down is merely a part of the stepping up.
So you don't even want to resist it, in a way.
Right.
It's like a Salvador Dali. Oh no, the MC Escher paintings. You're going down, but you're
in order to go up. Yeah, very good. So again, this is our argument to the Nefesh HaBahamis. The animal soul's argument is, the animal soul's view is, we're in exile. In exile means we're disconnected. It means that our soul is not as connected to Hashem as it was when the Beis Hamikdash was around. We're coming and saying, no, you're wrong. Our body is in exile. Physically, externally, superficially, we are disconnected, but our soul is just as connected now as it was ever. That's what we're saying. How are we going to convince the animal soul that? We've got to use logic. And the logic is, you have to agree that Hashem, his purpose is aliyah, is ascent. He wants us to be closer to him. That's his idea. Therefore, anything that happens must be a part of the process of us coming closer to Hashem. Everything that happens in the world, including a distance, a descent, a disconnect. It's all to connect to Hashem, including the disconnection. Every yurida, every step down, is for the sake of going up even higher than before. That means, so the animal souls could agree with that so far. Yes, that's true. Every descent is for the sake of an ascent. But the ascent comes later. The descent is a descent. So the animal soul says, yes, you're right, of course I agree that the exile is in order to return. The whole reason why the temple was destroyed was to rebuild a better one. The whole reason why the Jewish people were sent out, it was in order to come closer later. The whole reason why the soul came down into the world was to go even higher than it was before. The animal soul agrees with the logic of that. But the animal soul says, but in the meantime, we're in the state of descent. At the moment, we're in exile. There'll be an ascent afterwards. We'll go up later to be closer to Hashem. But in the meantime, until we get there, we're down. We're going down. We're further away from Hashem. We're in exile. And to that we say, no. Because Hashem is the one who sent us down, because the exile itself is the divine will, is the divine plan, it must be that the descent itself and every detail in it is a part of the ascent. You can't divide the two. It's not that there's a descent and later there'll be an ascent. It's that the descent itself is what's creating the ascent. The disconnect is what's creating the greater connection. Hashem is the master not just of the ascent that comes later, but of the descent that comes now. And so therefore even that must be
It has to be.
connecting with Hashem. The disconnecting is also the way to connect with Hashem.
It's the one part.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise,
It's not two powers fighting against each other, that Hashem's fighting against the powers of evil, and the powers of evil have caused the exile, and Hashem is going to win back. No, it's the same God who wants us close. He's the one who banished us. The one who wants the rebuilding is the one who destroyed. So the descent itself is a part of the ascent. The Yerida is a part of the Aliyah. And therefore every detail in the Yerida is a part of our relationship with Hashem, getting closer to Hashem.
Is there always a time difference between the descent and the ascent? Is there or is it always connected? Can it always be found together? That happens simultaneously? I mean, the descent is there and the ascent doesn't have to come in 100 years' time or a day's time. It's always hanging around.
What this is saying is that what we are calling a descent and an ascent as if it's two different directions. Right. It's not really two different directions. The way to get closer to Hashem is the descent. Right. It's all a part of one process. So it's not that there's an interruption to our relationship with Hashem, which we then have to repair. It's that it's all a part of the relationship. The descent is the way up. So you can't really divide between the two. And he continues, this is continuing in the argument to the Nefesh Abamis, halfway down that paragraph at the end of the line, Umikiven. Umikiven shehu yisbarachu etzem hatoiv. Now because we know that we've established that Hashem is in charge of the descent as well as the ascent, and because Hashem is etzem hatoiv, is goodness itself, Hashem is the definition of goodness, umeteva tov lehetiv, and the nature of a good being is to bestow goodness. If you're good, completely and utterly good, so then everything you do and everything you give and everything you bestow on and share is good. So if Hashem is goodness itself, and everything He does therefore is goodness, to the point where we talk about it as if it's His nature. I mean, Hashem hasn't got a nature, but we use the term, the nature of a good being is to do good, as if because a nature means you couldn't be otherwise. That's just who you are.
So how can we say that?
So one sec. Harimuvan shezeh ba shebachar b'yerida gedola kazu. Sorry. Harimuvan mizeh ma shebachar b'yerida gedola kazu hu lefi shezoy haderech hayechida shal yoda dafka efshel lava l'aliyah gedola halazu. So it must therefore mean the fact that Hashem chose such a deep descent, He sent us so low, it must be that it's because this is the only possible way through which we're able to get the great ascent afterwards. This is a very powerful idea. If there could be any other way that Hashem could have had the deep relationship He wants with us, if He could have done it in a way that is painless, that won't hurt, that won't be difficult, that it would be easy, that would be simple and uncomplicated, if He could have, He would have. If it would be possible to do that, He would have done that. How do we know? Because He's good. And a good